Okay. We're going to talk about some real live.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
I'm going to finish this up first this time.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
All right.
I'm out of here. Go for it.
No, you're not out of here. You're right ready to go. Can you guys hear me again still? All right? Yeah, I can't tell. Everybody should be in here already, including the famous Tony Trujillo just showed up. Okay, next thing we do, we're on my list of the agenda for this meeting and basically what you do at meetings. Next step, applying formulas. This can happen during the moderation or following the presentation. How the moderators work is we start with property, people, opportunity, and then the solution. Opportunity is problem, and opportunity are synonyms in real estate. That's the format of the moderator presentations. Formulas might come up during the solution. Write your ideas and formulas in written mini offers so the good idea is not lost. Okay, so at least scribble down enough to say a lease back or say something to let you know what you were thinking. And then when this is all done, you're going to ask more questions, as always, to optimize the benefits. Once the negotiation's begun and you say, hey, we got a temporary thing, well, what would you folks really want to do? And some examples are valuation. Something might have two properties at $1 million, and you might decide that you can trade them both straight across at $750,000. All of those things are things to optimize benefits.
Yeah, and then don't forget that while everyone is, or while the package is being moderated, one after the other, I at least have difficulty thinking about two things at once. And don't be afraid to write something that is probably stupid, but you need to get it out, and you can continue on afterwards. But
right. Now that's a great way to say, so what you're going to do is we're going to have presentations here where you, in order to be most effective, you got to be able to focus on each presentation, which means casting the last one out of your head and not thinking about the next one. And just pay attention to this presentation to the point where you ascertain whether or not there's merit to you or not in this performance, in this particular one. Don't just have one that's really important and then miss the next two or three, which might also have been important, just because of circumstances. Okay, what are formulas? There are books on formulas, a bunch of them. We won't go too much into more than we could. We'll give you examples of what we're going to give you. A formula is a way to get a deal closed. Lowering or raising the price is the simplest formula. Every realtor at every franchise in America knows how to do that. Seller carry is a formula most brokers know, although, as Tom pointed out, I've met people licensed 20 years who don't know because it's been about 20 years since it was common in regular real estate. Exchanges often involve combinations of formulas. And remember, necessity is the mother of invention. If it can be done easily, do it that way. If it can't be done easily, still find a way to do it because your client still has a problem that needs to be solved. All right, next. Okay, we're going to go over this quickly. I thought we were to Tom sooner, but we'll go through the creation of wealth formula here first. This is in many of the books. Bob Steele has a book of about 300 formulas. Royce Ringsdorf has one. Virgil Opfer, I think. If you have, Mike, you had a question?
Vidar.
Oh, Ken Vidar also has.
On the website.
Oh, Ken Vidar has one, yeah, on the website as well. So, creation of wealth is usually one of the first formulas in a book. What this is you've got a property. I don't have a little pointer, but you've got a house here that's worth $250,000. You own it. You owe $100,000 to the bank. That's this lower one here. You owe this $100,000 to the bank, okay? And you like the house, you want to keep the house, but you really like the fourplex across the street that's $400,000. So what you're going to do is you're going to, and you could get a new loan, let's assume, or they can sell it period. You're going to create a $100,000 second note against your $250,000 house, subject to the $100,000 first, okay? So it's going to be a second. And you're going to use that as a down payment. And you're going to give it to the owner of the fourplex, along with asking them to sell or carry for $300,000, or just go to the bank and give them $300,000 of money. Easiest example is just $300,000 of money. So, in the end, the people who have the fourplex, they could go trade forward, but we're just gonna talk about how this works. So you had a house with worth 250 with 100 debt. You have a fourplex worth 400,000 with 100,000 new note and 300,000 new debt, okay? You started with 150,000 equity in the house. You ended up with the same $150,000 of equity, okay? You didn't suddenly, by doing this, miraculously make the value of something change and create equity, no. You've still got $50,000 in the house left, that's the little roof there on the house there. And you have $100,000 of equity in the fourplex, because that upper yellow one here, this note here is really secured over there, okay? So this property now has 300,000 of debt, it's worth 400. Your house has 200,000 of debt, it's worth 250. You didn't do anything except redistribute your equity and acquire another property. So you went from owning 250,000 of property to 650,000. So how does this create wealth? Well, it didn't instantly in the exchange. How do you create wealth in real estate is by turning the pages on the calendar, okay? You get this set up, you turn the pages on the calendar, instead of making money on 250, you're making money on 650. If the market goes to hell, guess what? Wasn't a great thing, smart thing to do. You know, as long as you hang on it is, but this is for, this is the creation of wealth, this is a wealth building formula. Any questions about creation of wealth? I know that's kind of quick. This is available in the books, this is available to any of you who want to go over it again. I'm happy to talk to you about it. This is sort of a prelim before the 1031 paper kind of thing. All righty, next. All right, this is what we do now. Guess what? It's all you, Tom.
Oh, I see.
Now it's called Formula Stories with Tom Van Hurt. All right, Mr. Van Hurt, let's talk about, so on this slide, I talked to you about your deal and anything else, trades you've done, Murfreesboro.
Oh, yeah.
And then the bottom ones are other ones I've done. So,
Okay. Well, you know,
so this one's
many new people think that, you know, y'all come all the way to Vegas, you gotta deal in big deals. You know, there's a lot of people who gotta deal in $5 million deals and all that. We're all big shots. Let me tell you how you can make money on small deals through this group. About 5 years ago, my son-in-law, Joe, he had been broke. He had been broke in Crested Butte, Colorado, as a developer. And he, for a couple of years, stumbled around, and he flipped houses and did whatever to feed his family, feed my daughter, you know, and my grandkids. And one day he comes to me and he says, you know, I want to do something. This is, you know, I gotta do something. I want to come back. So I had just recently, this was about 6 years ago, become enthralled with mobile home parks. And I began to realize that the Midwest, we live in Colorado, which is ridiculously popular and hot market-wise. I had become enthralled with the Midwest, you know, Illinois, Michigan, and all those places, where the numbers for income property were much better. So I said to Joe, if you will make offers and do as I say, I will support you while you do this. I'll support you for a year. If you will do what I say for a year. So we were going to go and make offers on mobile home parks. And Joe got on the phone and he searched LoopNet and all those places, especially LoopNet. And a couple weeks later he says, I think I've got something. He says there is a 38-space mobile home park in Murfreesboro, Illinois, which is some little hick town near Carbondale, Illinois, which is the southern part of Illinois, which is, it's kind of hokey there, you know? It's a little bit like West Virginia or whatever. I hope I'm not insulting anybody. Anyway, he says it's only $80,000. And for 38 spaces. It was half empty, so, you know, about 18 paying customers, or at least customers who were supposed to pay. Anyway, he says, she'll carry. Oh, good. 10,000 down, and something over 10 years or something like that. So we wrote up the contract. We hadn't gone there yet, subject to inspection. A couple days later, oh yeah, there was 10,000 down and over 10 years, full AM, etc. A couple days later, he comes back and he says, you know, I'm nervous. I don't have much money, and I don't lose it, and 10,000 is a lot of money to me. I don't want to do it. How would you do it? Well, there are certain circumstances in which you would do it. He said, well, I don't want to pay, I don't want to make payments. Okay. I said, why don't you ask her? The seller, by the way, lived in Alaska. She had previously lived in Murfreesboro, Illinois. She had moved with her husband to Alaska. And she was very anxious to sell. So I said to Joe, why don't you just ask her? Why do you have to make payments? I mean, I want to carry. You can do whatever you want. You can ask whatever you want. Anyway, the end of the story is there would be no payments for the first 12 months, and then it was amortized over 10 years or whatever. And she said, all right, I really want to sell, so I'll go along with this. So he purchased it on an Illinois land contract. Does anybody know what the advantage is of purchasing on a land contract if you are the purchaser? Does anybody know? Yes, sir.
You don't have to foreclose it, you can forfeit the contract without going through any legal process of court action.
Okay, so the question is, it's easier to foreclose without having to go, because Illinois is a note and mortgage state. But that's not the question I asked. I asked, is there an advantage to the purchaser? Al?
Well, if you should default, it never shows up on your credit report.
You're not signing a promissory note.
Right.
You're not personally liable.
Right.
Correct. Anyway, we closed that deal, or Joe closed that deal, and we went out there, you know, with my motorhome. We drove out there and spent the night and talked to all the people, and we knew nothing about a mobile home park at that time. We said, okay, let's try this. So Joe started to collect payments from afar. He gave one of the tenants, made him manager and all that. And he says, wow, I'm making money. I don't have to make payments. I'm collecting rent. Great. So he then became thrilled with owning a park, and he went on to bigger and better things in Michigan. He became a substantial owner of mobile home parks. And a couple of years later, I think it was 3 years later or 4 years later, or 2 years later, 4 years ago, right? He said, you know, I'm gonna get rid of this park. It's too small. I'm a big shot now. What do I need to screw with this small park? I said, well, why don't you sell it? So he said, yeah, I'm gonna sell it. I said, how much do you want? He said, I just want $125,000. Just get me out, give me my cash, and I'm gonna pay off this woman. Let's just get it over and done with. That's the problem. Sell it. You know, he couldn't sell it for $125,000 cash in Murfreesboro, Illinois. You know, if you really throw a rock far, you hit the Ohio River in Kentucky. Anyway, he tried. He didn't really try very hard. He just put it on LoopNet, and he doesn't even answer his phone half the time. So I said, why don't you just give it to me? Okay? So I became his agent. And I first of all looked at the price and everything, and I said, it's worth $300,000. 8 cap, $300,000, what the hell? Own a care. So I presented it to our state meeting and presented it as a mobile home park with 8 cap. And some Sharpie came up and said, I want to buy this park, but I ain't paying you no $300,000. I will only offer you $200,000. Okay? 100% done. 100% financing. I said, okay. Why would a guy like you, who lives in Colorado, do with a mobile home park all the way in Illinois? And this Sharpie was Blake Allen. And I said, Blake, what in heaven's name do you want to do with a mobile home park all the way out there in Illinois? He says, well, I have a partner. Oh. In Illinois. I said, oh. So I said, Blake, not so fast. What else do you own? Okay, that is a magic question to always ask. What else do you own? And he said, well, I have this duplex in Colorado Springs. It's got a lot of equity in it. We looked at it. And I will put that up as additional collateral. I said, oh, so your contribution to this deal is to sign your name and to mortgage your duplex, and the other party, what's his name? Noah. Noah. He will be the manager. I said, oh, that sounds good. So we did that deal. There were payments of $1,000 a month, I think, and no money down. So we closed it at the attorney who had prepared the installment land contract, or the Illinois land contract. And that attorney said, well, wait a minute now, you're going to want him to sign a note and a mortgage? In Illinois, you should never do that, because then you can't foreclose. I said, well, they're going to sign personally. And I asked Blake, I said, you're going to pay, aren't you? I said, I know who you are, and I know who your partner is. And Blake says, yes. And we had to do it that way because it's a note, because in Colorado it's a note and deed of trust. So we put that deal together, and excuse me, and Joe said, well, I don't want to do this deal. I want cash. And I said, you said you wanted $125,000, right? He said, yes. So my pension plan buys and invests in own and carry notes. So I bought this $200,000 note for $125,000. He got the money. He was happy. My pension plan was collecting $1,000 a month plus a $70,000 discount over a 3-year period, because it was a 3-year loan. So then, about 6 months ago, I was trying to raise a lot of cash because I am heavily involved in fix and flip lending in Denver, where the market is just hotter than hell, like it is in many places, and that business takes up gobs of cash. So a member of our exchangers came up and had a house for sale in a suburb of Denver for $400,000, I think it was, doesn't matter. It was free and clear. And that guy, that member of our group, was retiring and he needed income. So he and I swapped. I gave him $400,000 worth of notes. And I had the house, which I sold, by the way, to one of my flippers. And everybody's happy. A stupid little deal, you know, where Blake and his partner, I don't think they even want to sell it for $300,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth more than that now.
Right.
If someone wrote us a check, it would be hard to pass up. It'd be hard for him to pass it up.
So you can start a deal like this with very little or nothing. And you can afford to do this over different places. You don't have to have multi-million-dollar properties. Are there any questions about that deal?
And you don't actually have to go to Illinois ever.
For sure. Yes,
Do you
sir.
have any more mobile home parks like that?
Yeah.
We got one in Murfreesboro.
All you have to do is look on the mobile home park store, and there's hundreds of them, little mobile home parks. There's millions, I'm exaggerating. There are many parks for sale in small towns to this very day. Yes, there are. We own 5 parks, 4 in Michigan and 1 in Farmington, New Mexico. And we only purchased that a year and a half ago. So,
I'll be
I mean,
talking
they're
about
out there, 80 spaces. And Farmington is not the little hick town I've discovered.
No?
They have 2 Walmart
So when
supermarkets.
are you getting rid of that one?
Ooh,
Sorry?
two
When are you getting rid of that one?
We're not getting rid of anything.
You're gonna call me.
We have 2 parks for sale in Michigan or under contract, and that's another story. Yes, sir.
Okay, it sounds like one of the secrets, and I've heard this before from Blake and other people, that boots on the ground, you need management to run these parks to make it,
Yes,
make it
yeah.
fly. Am I right?
My son-in-law manages it from Crested Butte, Colorado. He goes biking every day and skiing.
But I mean somebody in the park or in the town, am I right on that?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
sure.
How difficult
Oh, sure.
is that?
I'm just saying, I wasn't finished answering
Okay.
you. We're now changing over subject to mobile home parks. We have learned to manage them from afar for openers, okay? And in one park, we don't even have a manager, we have a greeter. And that greeter
Just gets paid less than a manager.
it's less than a manager. And for instance, just to give you an idea how we operate and how we've learned how to do this over the years, every month, that greeter has to mount a camera on her truck and drive through the park totally, so we know what it looks like. Tenants are trained or required to pay at the local bank, and we have account numbers for every one of them. I mean, we've got that organized, and you will be surprised because if you tell people you own a mobile home park somewhere, they say, oh, how do you handle the drug addicts? If I told you I had a nice apartment building in somewhere in Michigan, would you ask me the same question? And you probably wouldn't, because you think of an apartment building as better than a mobile home park, as to have a better class of tenants. That's your thoughts. That's what most people think. It ain't so once you get rid of the bumps. It ain't so. It's a country, what am I trying to say? A country club for the less well-off. It is better.
Minus the golf course and the pool.
Minus the golf course and the pool, because they are less well-off. But there's a fence around the place, there's an entrance. It is safer. These people watch for each other. One park, we have a 3rd generation family living there. The parents of the parents bought their place in the 60s.
Is that to get us depressed or depressed?
I'm sorry?
Is
Oh,
that to
okay.
get us depressed
All
or
right.
depressed?
So, your question, I understand your question. It is different than you think. I mean, we became experts at it. I mean, we went to seminars on it, 2-day, 3-day seminar on how to do this and all that. So I can't answer your question in just 5 seconds, but there is a lot to it, and we learned. And
But I'll answer his question, Jim. The reality is, if Noah's not in Illinois, I don't do the deal.
but that was the
Right,
that
yeah.
was the deal.
Also sounds like
If
an
I don't have
organization.
someone I trust there, I'm not gonna do the deal.
You've got systems in place and organization, that's key, it sounds like.
Absolutely, right. But it's like
He
owning
does,
rental properties
yeah.
out of state, right?
I've done this technique, and I'm not sure whether anybody else has utilized it. So talk about your mobile home court. You're looking at a yield, let's say you're saying this is gonna be a 5 cap. The other party
Please
doesn't.
don't use that word 5 cap.
10.
No, the
Or
10 ain't around anymore, but go ahead.
Yes. So the buyer is nervous about this because obviously they don't have the experience to run the operation.
Correct.
So what I've done is I've had the seller master lease the property back for, let's say, a year to 2 years. And then the party, then that master lease falls off, but the buyer then says, okay, I'm gonna be able to see the real numbers, I'm gonna feel comfortable.
Sure.
I'll do the deal. And you move forward with that because you're giving the security to the buyer that they're looking for, but it's on you to guarantee that in a way for that 2-year period. Have you utilized that to establish a value that makes it better than what you would have get if there was no master lease guarantee back?
Okay, that is all wonderful, and you're right. But we are bottom feeders, and we buy fixer-upper parks. And the first thing we want to do is the owner to get the hell out of the way and let us take over. It is like a poorly managed apartment building. You don't want the previous manager or owner in charge, and especially with a park, it is vital that.
Although I do see, and I see the specifics where Tom's talking about it because there are issues, exactly what he's addressing, but the other thing what Michael's doing is he's creating a fixed income triple net kind of vehicle out of the,
Yes.
of a mobile home park, which is what we
Yes.
don't think about. So they took the variability out of it.
Right, yes, sir. Ah,
Todd, right?
So why would the owner risk putting a master lease for someone that's coming in as a rookie? Are they taking a discount on the rent roll so they
No, the
get?
seller is master leasing it back. The seller is maintaining possession.
That's what I mean, the sellers, why would he risk that knowing that someone's coming in that's green? And I'm gonna, let's say it makes $1,000 a year, just to freeze the numbers.
Remember what I'm saying is that the master lease is by someone here, whether it's the old owner or the broker or someone, that's guaranteeing that you're gonna get a minimum of X rents. But if there's a surplus amount of rent, I get to keep it if I'm the master.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Is the master leaser gonna stay and hold hands?
For that year to 2 year period only.
Yeah.
Okay, but I see what you're saying too, you want him gone because he's been
my
sitting on
sellers,
the coin
we
machine
want
all the
it
time.
gone.
Right.
I mean, in
Depends on what
fact,
kind of park you're buying.
the seller was, in another part, was so anxious to get out and move to the Philippines with his Filipino wife, and he was in the process of destroying the property that he had inherited from his father, and he was in the process of destroying it. I mean, when we went to our due diligence, we asked, okay, what about this trailer, this customer? Oh my God, they're terrible people, and he was just telling us how awful they were. And then I went and talked to the terrible person. He says, oh, this manager, this owner, please buy this park. I mean, it is different. You gotta,
So
You gotta
same
get 'em
thing,
out of the
and it really depends on the motivation of the seller. When I bought a self-storage facility, she just wanted not to show up anymore. So I did the same thing, I guaranteed her a certain amount of rent. Look, you can't make it work what you're doing, your customers are pissed off for that reason, they don't like you anymore, you're 80 years old, you need to move on, let me come take care of it, and whether I pay you or not, you're losing it already, or mismanaging it already. So it's a better situation for them to just take hands off and let somebody else come to take care of it.
buying fixer-upper properties requires new control.
Right, and I guess what this gets back to, and that's basically the gist of what we do as far as real estate, just about the people, not really about the property. So we can talk about the specifics about the property, but you notice the discussion and the variables had to do with the individual people that were involved. And so that's really what it is. We set these parameters up, and then you, by knowing the people, determine what's the best thing. Because Michael probably had a better operator and a better park than Tom had envisioned in most cases when you buy a distressed park. Because when you buy a distressed park, you know, they're not good managers, pretty much. And that's part of the situation.
9.8 out of 10 times.
Yeah, most of them, they're not good managers. All right, so.
Okay, so are there any other questions about that deal?
About the
Can you
Murphy's
see, the Murphy, can you see how you can do something like that with almost no money and create quite a bit of profit?
And then
I mean, you
again-
could live off it for 2 years.
And then you can be the next step of the story because we own it, we'll move it somewhere else. So,
Okay, you go ahead.
I'm gonna go ahead. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through some formulas. We have about a little less than an hour left. I'm gonna go through these examples quickly because we then have some questions. David Sanchez in my office, I'd asked him, what questions do you have after having come to the meetings for about a year or so? And so I've got some questions he asked, which are probably your questions as well. Murfreesboro example, he showed you that everybody won. There's nobody there that's not happy with it. We make a good income from the thing. We're thrilled. We got a fully financed park. We're gonna make $100,000+ on it. Next, more of a trading a note for houses. So an example that I did, and I'm gonna go through these fairly quickly, and I expect if you want more info to follow up, we have other videos that go over these examples a little bit more in depth. I own some cabins in Woodland Park, Colorado, which I believe are in the book now at $950,000. I created a $600,000 first note and deed of trust against them, and I used that first note and deed of trust to buy 11 houses and a duplex in Belleville, Illinois, totally with management in place. So, first of all, why did I do this? And, you know, what are the benefits? So, I had about $450,000 of private debt. One of the things I do for people, you know, hard money types or private lenders, people like that, is they charge more interest than you could normally you'd pay the bank, but they don't have yield maintenance. They don't usually have the same points. They don't have all of the other horrible things that you do. I would much rather pay a Tom Vinner 10 or 12% than I pay Wells Fargo 4 or 5%. Because if it's commercial property with yield maintenance and you don't go to the term of the loan, you'll see the terms aren't that much different. So that's just a little aside. So I had $450,000 of private money from somebody who wants to keep making 12% on those cabins. I didn't want to keep it there. I want to just keep acquiring more stuff. So I created a $600,000 note, and I went and I bought a bunch of houses, and I just had to move my $450,000 of debt to it.
Does everybody know what creating a note means?
I guess I'll be going through that. So how we create.
Does that mean a typewriter in the old
Yeah.
days?
Yeah.
And you did type up a note and then mortgage or a deed of trust.
In Colorado, we're very fortunate. Our state Department of Regulatory Agencies, in addition to standard contracts that we have, also provides us with a standard note and deed of trust acceptable to all our public trustees in all of our counties. That's something most people don't have. Anyhow, I can get on the computer, literally. All I had to do to create that paper was I wrote a promissory note and a deed of trust on the property I own in Colorado, and that's it. I sign it, and then it gets notarized. Michael?
The trustor presumably is you or your entity that's the.
No, we don't, we're a public trustee state, so we have a public trustee.
Okay, who is the beneficiary of that note?
The beneficiary of the note becomes the owner of the property I'm acquiring. So what happens is you now get the payments on them. So Ted Blank, who we all know, owned a bunch of houses in Illinois. He likes paper. I gave him a $600,000 note that's 6% interest only with a 5-year balloon. And I write, actually the note holder who has it now, I write them a check for $3,000 a month out of the income from, you know, the cabins, but it could just as well be the income from the houses I bought. So
During the bad old days, I had a sort of a partner, or at least we shared the management. We owned a lot of houses, and we needed money. So I would type up a note made payable to him, for $50,000, and he would type up a note for $50,000 payable to me on his house. And back then, we used to put an ad in the paper to sell those loans. And that's how we found investors, and that's how we sold our own loans, and that's how we made money, or that's how we lived.
Acquiring multifamily by buying a liquor store. Here's just a typical talking to people, okay? There's multifamily in Manitou Springs I wanted to acquire. It's right in the middle of town, right across from the park. Half a dozen people wanted to own it. He didn't want to sell it. And I asked, he didn't want to sell it yet, even though he'd sold another multifamily. He'd already had his place in Oregon. I said, talked to the guy, I said, hey, why do you sell me that multifamily? He says, well, I'm not going to sell that multifamily until I sell the liquor store. I said, okay, I'll buy the liquor store.
Does everybody understand that or not?
It's a must take.
It's a must take, yeah, the liquor store was a must take. I bought
That
the
was his
liquor store and the apartment complex. Asked him what he wants. Oh, he wants $500,000 in money and he wants $1 million note. Okay, because he wanted $500,000 in money and $1 million note, good, secure, first position note. I was able to acquire the multifamily and the liquor store without putting any money out of my pocket whatsoever. Okay, so.
So how many
Find out what they
houses do
want.
you now own in Illinois? In
So I own 11 houses in a duplex in Belleville. I own,
okay.
how many houses in Murfreesboro? I don't know. But
Right.
that changes.
By the way, that is a totally different area than the houses that Blake owns in the
Yeah.
greater St. Louis area.
Yeah, a little bit
Metropolitan
different.
area.
Not
It's a
too
different
far.
deal.
But anyhow.
Those houses are.
Whether it's there or not, these are just examples I know. Now, what's created paper, just what Tom's saying, anytime, and what we did with creation of wealth. If you want to buy something and you've got equity anywhere, or even if you don't, you can create a note and you can go buy something with it. Okay? All you have to do is make sure you pay all those payments. Okay? When you sign a promise to pay, you have to pay. Okay? As long as you do that, you create a solid financial instrument, anyone will take it. It's,
And of course, you don't have to pay. You can type up a note without personal liability.
Without payments.
Where you basically say, here's the collateral. I hope you like it. I want you to like it, but I don't want to be personally liable.
That's called
And
non-recourse.
that you have to probably pay a little more or whatever. But nobody says that you have to be personally liable if you sign a note. Banks are a little funny about that. I don't blame them.
But yeah, you can get non-recourse financing. What that just means is that, what Tom says, the only place they can go to have recourse is the property itself. They can foreclose on the property. They can't come after you individually.
The holder of this note shall look no further than the property for repayment.
Right.
I have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
Most of these you're describing, I'm guessing, are first position notes, right? What is
Yeah,
are you guys
these ones
active
are
with
first
second positions? Could I put a second on my house for $100,000 to use as a down payment to buy your mobile home park, as an
Of
example?
course, that's what the creation.
Right, theoretically, except now you're getting involved in your personal residence and other issues.
Yeah, and I guess, the answer is, as long as it's not the house you live in with your wife and kids and subject to Dodd-Frank and all that, anything else, yeah, if you've got a piece of land, you got anything else, we can do it, but your own house is the one we generally don't do.
When you do that, the purpose of the loan is critical. If you can borrow against your personal residence without Elizabeth Warren getting involved, as long as the purpose of the loan, and it is clearly so stated by both parties, is for business purposes.
Correct. But again, yeah, and that's, so have an attorney, all of these things, if you don't have all the statutory forms where you're entitled by your state and your association to use them, have an attorney help you.
Whenever I deal out of state in a transaction like that, I always hire a local attorney.
Right.
I kind of like
Yeah,
attorneys.
that's always
They
the-
protect me against the seller or buyer, whatever.
And so so let's move to the next one, 1031 paper. This is the thing I've got to YouTube channel called 1031 Paper. We're creating a marketplace for it. What it is when someone wants to buy something from you with the seller carry,
You're gonna have to go slow, Blake.
Sorry.
Because people will, it's hard to understand.
I know. So you have a property you would like to sell, and you have a buyer, and they need a seller carry, and you don't want to carry that. You want to do a 1031 because you need to do a 1031. You can, just like you use these Federal Reserve notes in your pocket, these regular dollars, you can pass that note deed of trust through the 1031 process. So you can sell a property, carry the financing, and still do a 1031. Because you're gonna take the paper as the vehicle that you're gonna go to the next property. If you have enough money in your pocket, you can just buy that note out of the exchange and now have a full basis on the new property that you're buying and collect the note. But if you don't have the extra cash to write that check, you can go buy your new property with the note. And that's what 1031 paper is. And that's just a created paper
becomes
secured by
personal
something you're
property,
selling.
And you can exchange personal
Yeah.
property.
It becomes personal property, but it's held by the qualified intermediary, so we don't want it to become personal property. And then the question is, for your CPA, it may become an installment sale if you hold the paper. Again, that's a CPA question. Next one there, more formulas. Okay, we'll do this real quick. Tom, in 2009 or 10, shows up at the meeting with a 4-foot 2x4. Not this guy, okay? This young fella right here shows up at this meeting, and he's lecturing people, and he's carrying around a 4-foot 2x4. Okay, this was because he's a hard money lender. We were at a time when the market, the curve usually goes left to right that way. The curve sometimes goes downwards. Okay, when it's dropping off, knives falling off the table kind of thing. He still had hard money loans. Okay, he was realistic about the price. Some of his borrowers weren't. He says, you lower the price. If they don't lower the price, you hit them with a 2x4. Okay? And so he was willing to take a loss as he recognized the market going down, correct, Tom? He was saying, listen, it was worth this much. I lent you this much. It's now worth this much. I'll take that much. Okay? Let's go. Let's get rid of it. And that is what.
Well, that is a formula for bad times.
Yeah, that's a formula for bad times.
We
It's
don't
the
want to
2x4.
talk about bad times, but of course they will come back someday.
Right.
Who knows when?
Right. The next formula I always like, and many of you in the room have witnessed it, raise the price of rate formula. It always works. Okay?
I think that went past people.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Maybe we need to
When
explain
you raise
that.
the price, it always works, depending on how you benefited. One is perception in the market. The Murfreesboro example is another perfect example, okay? When we thought he's asking 300,000, and then we get him 195 or 200,000, good man, good job. Okay? He got it for 104, okay? It always works. Borrow my equity is another formula. Anyone here in the room who has free and clear equities or big amounts of equity may be willing to allow you to pledge it as collateral for a loan in exchange for part of your deal. Okay, that's just called a borrow my equity formula, just to let you know what's out there.
I think the person who did that is probably by far the biggest. He just was in the room, but he
Yeah,
just
lives
walked
or
out.
so, yeah.
Okay.
Will
Michael,
Jones-
are you here?
Yeah. I'll think you said,
Okay.
Mike put up a bunch of collateral that's in several of the videos. Got Will Jones rescued a nursing school or developed, multi-million-dollar nursing school because the people in this group pledged collateral, and guys like Tom lent money on the collateral as a way of getting money. One of my favorites always is land plus cash equals paper. You got a piece of land you want to get rid of, give me or other people a call, add an equal amount of cash to it, we'll give you a note and deed of trust against something. That's how we end up with a lot of extra pieces of spare land. Trade land for a second note. So guess what? I got these pieces of spare land I got from doing that other formula. Any one of you young folks, and I've told Andrew, I think this, and some other people, I have pieces of land in the book or other places. I will trade it for a second note on that thing that you want to buy. Okay? That's your down payment. Okay, so.
Maybe we should, I don't know whether Michael would want us to talk about that. Michael, are you around?
Yeah.
Well,
out there somewhere.
I'll talk about it for a minute,
Okay,
if
yeah.
I Will Jones, some of you may know who he is. He is really the father of this group. And he is coming tonight at the cocktail party. And he wanted control of a nursing college in Salt Lake City. He didn't have any money. He partnered up with Mike Lipster. Mike owns property in Montana, free and clear. And will borrow money from people like me and several people, about 5 of us actually. And he didn't have any collateral, but he borrowed the collateral from Lipster. Lipster said, I'll lend you this collateral so that Tom Van Earth can make a loan to Will Jones. Will Jones signed personally. Lipster put up the collateral, and 5 of us did that on a significant basis. And that's how Will got control of this college. And in fact, 2 years ago, just before COVID, Will was so thankful that this was done that he took all 5 of us, including himself, he called us the Wolfpack 6, to my home country of Amsterdam, of Holland, on a all expenses paid trip, first class, all the way. That's how we got paid in addition to our interest.
And then the rest of the stories we'll leave for later.
Right.
No, absolutely no. And there's that's the classic example, probably the biggest one we've done in this group that fits that kind of formula. And it works great, and he's very wealthy, because of it. Trade Landfist, buy with somebody else's property. That's just what we're talking about right there. All right, next.
Oh, what a burden, taxation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Cash is
God.
a depreciating asset that comes with the burden of taxation. Everybody knows that if someone gives you $1 and you have to pay 30 cents to the government, you should go ahead and pay them, but that's its own thing. Cash is liquid and universally accepted. So basically the first one, cash is bad, it depreciates, but it's liquid. Notes bear interest. They're usually secured by bigger assets. They're generally guaranteed by the borrower, not always. And new loans that aren't these kind of notes that we do often need underwriting to generate the cash. Our kind of notes don't require the same kind of.
Most notes bear interest.
Most
Is it
notes
no?
bear
People
interest.
always say, oh, you have to charge interest.
You don't.
No,
have to
you
charge
do
interest.
not.
Right, exactly. Michael.
Yes, sir.
I was going to mention one of the things that you can do is have somebody act as a guarantor for a loan and get a piece of the deal just by doing the guarantee.
Absolutely. And so the borrower may not be strong enough, someone can come in just with the guarantor signature and get a piece of the deal. We're doing it.
It's a common
Syndication.
practice. Several people not in this room, but several people who are members of this group and of the other SEC made a significant living co-signing loans, big loans at commercial banks.
Written credit.
I know one guy who really did that very successfully. Yes, sir.
What would be like an average amount that you would ask to do that? To get a
Could you repeat that? Could you use?
Stephen asked, how much would somebody ask for or be willing to get? And that's got to be negotiable. That's not something we can probably talk about in the group, because that would be fixing, probably.
Between the parties.
Yeah, it's whatever you can get. One guy wants it cheaper, one guy wants it more expensive. You figure it out, but.
There are no standards.
No
That's your
standards, yes.
question.
I guess that's the best thing. There are no standards.
Especially Tom.
And these are just philosophies and what are they worth? Seller should only take cash or pay taxes on needs other than real estate. Of the stuff we're coming out. Seller can tend to be when the cash or the paper. The price is less important to the buyer with less loan costs and hassles, which allows you to create bigger or more paper. And the focus of everything we do should be on the benefits the seller seeks and buyer's ability to deliver those benefits, which gets us back to Tom's question, why do they really want that cash? All right?
I just want to say one thing to the gentleman, is that there are people who made a lot of money signing these loans during good times. There are also people I know
got
who lost
crossed.
everything because they signed personally and the collateral that was used was insufficient to pay the loan and the bank went after them. So
So 2008
it goes
happened.
both ways.
Yeah, it happens. Power of the room, this is the thing I'd like for all of you to realize, I think you realize it now just in this class, just in the power of who we have in the class talking about it. There's unbelievable power from all of us working together collectively, pulling in the same direction, something that is unfathomable until you witness it. It is more than just a place to raise cash and buy or sell properties. That is one of my pet peeves. If you have something you're just looking to sell it for money, there's an internet for that, okay? We do a lot more than sell things for money.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course, you can say all the time.
Yeah, you know, I have a private money loan business. I make hard money loans. And I've been doing that for a long time. But people ask me, well, how did you get the money to start? Because I started my hard money loan business with no money. And I raised most of the money over the last 30 years from members of our local exchange group. All the guys who liked me, we'll use that word, it wasn't liking all that much. I used the loans I made as collateral. And I gradually built up my own equity, but I started the loan business with no money through our local exchange group.
Right, and so you can borrow money on a note, you can borrow against a note, you can sell some of the payments, you can sell the balloon, a whole bunch of things you can do with paper. It's unbelievably valuable. So the goal that we have is to get deals closed for the clients and the attendees. The moderators are going to ask questions to get answers, to solicit interest in the set of benefits being offered, and to identify the order that is being placed. Okay, the person coming up here placing their order for their hamper. All right. So what I'm going to go through now is some multiple formulas I went through with the 28-unit apartment complex I have that ended up, paying off my house, and ended up with a piece of land that Chuck has that he's bringing to the book. Let's start from the beginning though. I had a bunch of land that, we've gotten through in, one way or another, doesn't matter. I had a bunch of land and I was looking to build my portfolio. This was in 2006, okay, when the trees still grew to the sky back then. Everything was wonderful.
Just like now.
Just like now. The trees now are growing to the sky, except guess what? Trees don't grow to the sky, everybody, okay? They stop growing at a certain point. What I'm talking about with that, for those of you who may not know that language yet, the economy is going to do great for a long time, but it's not going to do great forever, okay? So what I did was I purchased this with a private blanket mortgage. So I went to a guy who's even worse than this one, who charged me even more money, and because he wouldn't do it, he was too cheap. Anyhow, I had about $1 million of land, and I was buying $1 million apartment complex. I did it fully financed. You put up my land, fully financed it with hard money, negative cash flow, all these things that people in the book tell you, oh gosh, you don't do those kind of things. Well, I did. I bought a nice 28-unit apartment complex. It had a lot of vacancy. I got that filled up right away. Not very far from where I live. 7 brick fourplexes, okay? Ground level, exactly what everybody wants. Built by a builder who kept them forever. At 7 buildings on 9 lots, okay? Just by looking at it, by dumb luck, again, which is where we make our money, some of the property lines went right between the buildings. I was able to go to the assessor and do what we call an assessor subdivision. I think I'm bringing it up here, it's all right. Do what we call this assessor subdivision, and say, Mr. Assessor, instead of 1 tax ID number, I'd like 5. He looked at the map, said, sure, no problem. So I turned the 28 units into 3 4plexes and 2 8plexes, okay? I refinanced, so as the economy was limping, okay? We're going in 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, okay? Trees got cut down, those ones that were going to the sky and everything, revisited. So I refinanced 2 of the 4plexes and into separate little 1 to 4 unit financing, and actually did sale leasebacks. I had other people, because at that time I didn't have the ability to go do that. I had some other people, clients come, buy 2 of the 4plexes. I did a master leaseback, gave them the yield they needed, At that time, all they had to do was fog up a mirror, it didn't cost them anything, and they got a yield, okay, from getting the loans. The other 20 units, I had a hard money lender who was a client, who became a client, and then no longer a client. He managed to turn a $240 million line of credit into a $9 billion bankruptcy in the process of this. But to start with, I had him refinance the 20 units. I kept the 2 fourplexes separate because I knew that way I could keep the apartment complex, keep control of it, no matter what happened. He went bankrupt. I owe him $1.4 million. I negotiated, he'd take a $600,000 payoff. I went to the marketing session and I created a $650,000 12% interest-only first position loan secured by 20 apartment units. And one of the Sharpies, as he calls them, the smart people in the room, Ted Blank, said, I'll do that. Ted Blank bought that note for $650. And guess what happened for me as well? $1.4 million debt, $650.
Income.
Yeah. Shut up.
I knew that question, I knew somebody would question that.
We'll just ignore that part of the question, okay? Because we don't want to address that right now. Anyhow, the debt was reduced, okay? You do need a way to offset that reduction in debt, okay? We don't want you to get into that. So what I did is then I made a new package, okay? Because now I've got a property that has 2 fourplex loans on 2 of them, and 20 units at $650 to Ted. I still owed maybe like 200 or something on each of the fourplexes. So I had about $1 million I needed. So I took it to the market session and offered it out for a discount sale lease back. Okay, the thing was worth a couple million. I said I would really love to sell it to you for a lot less than that and buy it back from you, and I want you to help me refinance it. So I found 2 nice gentlemen here. One of them had 20 lots in Cortez, Colorado that Chuck's bringing the meeting, and also 670 acres in the middle of nowhere in Pershing County, Nevada. It's actually nicer than that, it's nice hills and all. But, you know, really just holding the world together. One at 400,000, the other at 250,000. Both of those people, I think, I don't know both of them, but the 400,000 and 20 lots, Steve Gallagher, who'll be here at the meeting, he made a loan back, you know, before when times were good, you know, through this whole crisis, had to foreclose on it, and was holding these lots that really, you know, I'll tell you right now, weren't worth and still aren't worth the $400,000 that he had lent, okay? But he wanted to recoup his $400,000, and he could do that without having a taxable event. So I said, Steve, and then John Tyler, another guy, I said, Steve, I'll give you $400,000 for your land, and John will give you $250 for your land, but this is how we're doing it. I'm going to take the 2 pieces of land in, along with a new loan. We're going to master lease it with the option to buy it back. Several years later, I exercised the option and sold it, and I still have some of the land. Right now, let's switch to Chuck's slides, if you could.
Now, if your head is spinning, if you are new and your head is spinning with all this mumbo jumbo, you've got to realize that the only way you start thinking about this is to not be alone. You know, that's why we have these meetings, so you can socialize and strategize and talk about these deals, because deals like that aren't made just when he's sitting in his home office in the basement or whatever, talking to himself. That's
I needed other people to do this.
You need other people to really give you feedback. That's one of the things that I don't like Zoom. Sorry, Zoom people, but you know.
No, absolutely.
That's the benefit.
Right.
And
right. If I had not closed deals and helped Steve and John with other situations, they probably wouldn't have stepped up and said, "Hey, I want to do this deal." Okay. I mean, they may have because of the benefit, because
and coming here is not enough. You know, I live 30 miles away from Denver in the mountains, and yet I go every day into the city and have lunch with a friend and talk about our business and strategize and on and on and on, because otherwise nobody can do your deal unless they are in that mindset. if you
Right,
will.
right. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sell it, I'm gonna lease it back, and I'm gonna buy it back, okay? Because I don't wanna get rid of my apartments, I wanna keep them, I just need to refinance them, I had a loan problem, I had a lender problem. We had some guys with mistakes, we talked about mistakes, right? Cortez, Bergen County, Nevada, I have to take them. Next. Okay, I really love Chuck's picture of our real estate professionals. This is what we all look like. And you want to do what? So get to the next one. All right, so I sold it to them for $1,750,000, and I leased it back at 6% absolute triple net. I paid everything, so they got a 6% yield. So the $400,000 of land, he got $2,000 a month. Okay, that's 6% triple net. I'm gonna buy it back at the same price. I sold it to them for $1,750,000. I'm buying it back for $1,750,000. Okay, go ahead. So on the buyer's side, they had to go get a $1.1 million Fannie Mae loan. Just as an aside, when I paid the yield maintenance and sold this thing, if you really look at the cost of a 4.6% Fannie Mae loan and you don't go to term, it's about 9%. So just, you know, when someone offers you an agency loan, my own personal opinion, don't take it. And, you know, they got $1,100,000 Fannie Mae loan. I also took the land and those lots as the down payment. So I got $1.1 million in money. It's missing that extra zero still, Chuck. So $1.1 million in money, plus I got the 670 acres and I got the 20 lots in Cortez free and clear. Okay, so that's what I got instead of $1,750,000 in money. Okay, I used the $1.1 million and I paid off my loan. Okay. I had a little bit of change left, but not very much. I got 670 acres in Nevada free and clear, and I got 20 lots in Cortez, Colorado free and clear. What I did now, just in May, and this is, you know, the life-changing kind of moments every one of you will have if you stay in this group long enough. I sold those apartments for $3 million, okay? I exercised my option at $1,750,000 and sold them the same day for $3 million. It cost me some money. I cleared more than $1 million in the bank. I paid off my house, okay? Back to the tax thing, Michael, how can I do this? Why didn't I do all the regular formulas? I rolled into this year with over $2 million in net operating losses, carry forward losses. That's the only reason this can be done this way, is because of the hell I went through to get here, okay? Right? You don't get $2 million worth of losses without losing $2 million. Just saying, okay? All right, bam, I love it. So straight, free and clear, you can't see the whole thing. I got my lots and I got my 670 acres. So go to the next one. Okay, can we help you? Okay, this is back to what Chuck's whole point is here, okay? When we look at this land, okay, look at how much benefits I got, okay? Does it matter if that land has any value at all? I tell you what doesn't matter to me. I'd do it if that land had no value, okay? If it were 2 bags of dog food at $400,000 and $250,000, I'd still do this deal, okay? Bonus is, guess what we've got? We still got 20 lots in Cortez. I have the 670 acres probably traded for a project in Indiana, but I'll move the project in Indiana because I'm not a builder or developer. As Chuck will tell you, that's not my skill set. But what Steve Gallagher did for me, and what John Tyler did for you, I'm in a much better position now to do that than I was then, okay? Steve Gallagher was in a strong position financially, John Tyler as well. They were able to go get, as tenants in common, so they came in, so you know the nuts and bolts, they bought this as tenants in common, one putting in 250, one putting in 400, keeping all the numbers where they should. They didn't have a taxable event because their basis was higher than that when they went into them, okay? So their end of it was all safe with that. But what I'm saying and what Chuck's proposing is, listen, it doesn't matter, it didn't matter to me if any of this land had any value because of the extra benefits. I expect to have to deliver a lot of benefits and receive a lot of benefits from it, but I expect to have to deliver a lot of benefits in order to get somebody to take this property, okay? There's gotta be someone out there who is very much in a situation similar to what Blake Allen was, 5 years ago or however long it was when we did this, okay? I'd like to find that person. I'd like to give them 20 lots in Cortez as a down payment, get somebody like Tom Van Arp or somebody to join with me, and we're gonna make their dream come true. And in the meantime, guess what? I'll get that $400,000 out of that Cortez lots, and somebody else, the next person will too, and they're not worth it. Michael?
I was just gonna mention on the,
debt forgiveness income. So when you discount a note, well, you know this, of course, you discount a note, that discount is income, ordinary income to you. But the way around that is you have that note purchase, whoever's giving you the money, by another person who buys the note and keeps the note alive, and then you do not have debt forgiveness income, but you have control over it, and you don't have the tax liability.
Right, and that is part of how we did it as part of the process. But yeah, that is part of it, but again, yeah, the forgiveness of debt, here's another situation though. If I make $800,000, then I'm gonna have to pay maybe $250 or $300 in taxes. I probably still do it, right? Because 800 is more than 250 or 300. Alrighty, so yeah, there's your whole story. So now the land is in the book and ready to go. So okay, next, follow up. Okay, call me, bug the hell out of me. Everybody else, be it like a dog with a bone. Don't give up until you brainstorm and exhausted all the possibilities, and then think of more ways of doing the deal. Don't forget notes, third legs, and other takers. Back to motivations. Cortez land example. Is that price on that important? Is that price on Cortez? Does that matter? Doesn't matter at all, does it? Didn't matter to me, shouldn't matter to you. What are the benefits to a new owner? Damn near nothing, okay, except what I bring. What were the benefits to me? I got a brand new, free and clear, well not brand new, I got my house. Unbelievably nice house, free and clear, pretty beneficial. Didn't I get plenty of benefits already? I did, okay? My current motivation is the future. I don't know what these things are worth, but I tell you what, I can make your dream come true, and I bet I can make them worth what I paid for them. All right, now we're going to switch a little bit, and Tom and I are going to help answer Dave's questions, and if you guys have any other questions. David Sanchez, he's been with me about a year. He was a guy who did syndications for years. He taught a class back in April or January on syndications. A lot of people see him anyhow. He's been in this group about a little bit over a year. I asked him, what kind of questions you have, Dave, that you haven't learned in the time you've had? His first question is, how do we build credibility with others in the room? That's a hard one that we had to think about, and I wrote the answer. Don't screw anybody, okay? Do what you say you'll do, and keep coming back. That's all you can do. If you go tell people how wonderful you are, that ain't gonna get you any credibility at all. Okay, now these are just standard questions we're gonna answer, and anybody in the room who wants to help. How do we write a contract for an exchange? You write the only contracts you're allowed to write as a licensee. In Colorado, we don't have an exchange contract. We'll use contracts. I'll do a contract to buy and sell and a contract to buy and sell simultaneously dependent on each other. The side benefit is I can say proceeds from the sale of one of them as the equity down on the other. The banker sees a single contract, says proceeds from the sale of this property. They go ahead and give you the loan. The closer closes it just like they would because you're moving equity. Same, the paperwork's all exactly the same. It's not very different is the answer, okay? Instead of exchanging for cash, you're exchanging for something else. You've already done thousands of exchanges. Every time you closed a deal, you exchanged for cash. Sorry about that. Are appraisals important?
Well, sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not.
Exactly. That's the answer we're going to get.
And,
Always.
you know what MAI
You think they're
says?
always important?
No, benefit.
Yeah.
You're getting a bank loan, probably.
Oh, I don't think they're always
Yeah,
important.
yeah, so say, yeah, so sometimes they may be, if you don't know something somewhere, sure, get an appraisal, but it's really about the benefits.
It's just another opinion.
Yeah, another opinion, exactly. How do we move through a property quickly? Goodness,
You can't answer that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Everything's so different on
One
this, but the
step at a
reality is-
time.
Yeah,
One step at a
Well, that
time.
would be one answer for
Right,
sure.
exactly.
I mean, and sometimes it takes a year.
yeah, but sometimes you
A week, I mean,
sometimes
it
you
depends.
move it, you set it up and it's gone before you close, I guess is part of what we're talking about.
It
too.
also depends on.
Sometimes you do it, you don't like the in lieu clause, you're not gonna even take it. You're gonna move through it so quickly you never even owned it, okay? What about offering multiple properties for one? Not a problem. You just have to make sure your CPAs and your qualified intermediaries and everybody keep track of
A
it.
good example would be Blake's 12 houses, is it 12 or whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, no, oh yeah, but that was for a no. But then one example is they offered me 2 pieces of land and a loan for my apartments. That's multiple for one, so we can do that. Are inspections important? Yeah, I would say inspections are important. Would you say inspections are important?
Very.
Did I say what?
Inspections are important.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's why God created airplanes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why God created airplanes, because God did create airplanes. Anyhow.
And by the way,
Yes, you'll do due diligence on these deals just like you do every other one for your clients, okay? Just because it's an exchange and your buddy gave it to you, doesn't mean you don't go and make sure those tenants, you go get estoppel statements if it's appropriate. I mean,
and it's easier nowadays to, with Zoom and everything, to inspect a property, but, when it really gets down to it, you want to go there, and you better be almost sure that you're going to close. And if you're not, there's nothing wrong with asking the seller, let's say, for money, for expenses, to go out there. Hotel, airplanes. I've done that. I've made a loan and I said, well, I will commit, but I want to see this property.
It's
And I
easier to
don't
get-
really, I'm not 100% sure that I want to do this. I say that to myself because of this, and this. I'll go look at it, but I want you to fund it.
Yeah,
Not
the
at
difference
the
is
time
the
of
lender-
closing, but now. Write a check. Right.
Most people that with the lender are more willing to pay for the lender to go do the
Right.
due diligence trip.
It's
It depends
easier
on the
for me
offer
to
you're
ask for
offering
money.
and how to do it and how much due diligence they need on yours. But it's not unreasonable, like he says, if you gotta go look at it and it's far away, that's a risk. So Dave's questions continue. What is paper? Okay. Paper is any document that either transfers ownership or a share of ownership in a property to somebody else and involves usually a payment, usually an interest rate. It's an agreement between parties. We just call it paper. Usually it's notes, deeds of trust, contract for deed, made or master lease with an option. How do you create paper? It's, like I said, it's with the ink in your pen. Okay, you either have an attorney if it's in an area you're not approved to write it, or yourself. You just write it. It's really simple. Who holds the paper? That's the note holder or the holder in due course. If you're seller carrying, you hold the paper until you give it to somebody else. You sign it over to them. Now, when you sign a note over to somebody, important thing Tom will tell you, when you sign a note over to somebody, you may want to go ahead and write, I'm signing this note over to Val without recourse. Okay? Because when you take a note from somebody else and you give it to a third party and you assign it to them and you don't say without recourse, you guaranteed that note. Okay? You're now the borrower. They're thrilled because they got the guy who owned the note now as the borrower. If you want to do that, you can, but you should get something extra if you're going to do it that way. So, what happens with a foreclosure with paper? The same thing anywhere else. Okay, in Colorado, you show where you asked them to pay, they didn't pay, they didn't pay for this amount of time. You made a demand to pay, they didn't pay. You did all the things you have to do with the statute. You take it down to the public trustee and you say, here's my original note, here's my original deed of trust, here's the payment history, here's the letter where I told them, pay, here's where they didn't pay. Please, Mr. Public Trustee, go for a close. Colorado is an easy way to do it. Most states, you say, Mr. Attorney, guess what? The guy didn't pay me. He says, okay, bring me your paperwork. And then you write a check, and later you get a big check if you don't. Like, is property location important? It is. It's not the 3 rules of real estate, though. Okay? So, yes, location, location, location. If it's got all 3 of them, it's important. And it's important sometimes, not always. What would your answer to is property location important?
Well, that's kind of a dumb question. Whoever posed that. Come on.
Come on, Dave. Next question. Okay, this is a good question. Why is there so much land in the book? You can see why there's one piece of Cortez land in the book. Why is there so much land in the book?
Well, I don't really have an answer. I got to think about that.
Okay, land is hard to sell.
Doesn't cash flow.
It doesn't.
It doesn't cash flow, and it is not really going up in value in many instances. It is more used as change, if
Currency.
you will.
Yeah,
Currency
currency.
land is another word.
Trading stock.
And another thing that I've found in, doing this 35 years, when you're selling a piece of land, and I bet Steve England agrees to a certain extent, most of the time you put a sign on the land, and when the paint is so worn off that sign that you can barely get the person's number off of it, then that's gonna sell, okay? How do you get land sold? You buy with it. But yeah, why is there so much land? It doesn't have a ton of intrinsic benefits. And a lot of times when our client says, what property do you not want? It's usually that piece of land.
I'll give you an example about BS land, as I call it. Not all land, but I'm talking about some land in Borough. I once got control of a subdivision like you're talking about, and I used it to purchase owner-carry mortgages at a discount. And this is when interest rates were higher. And let's say you had a $100,000 mortgage, and you really didn't feel like paying more than $50,000 for that mortgage, and the seller wanted $75,000. I'd say, well, I'll give you the 50 grand, and I'll give you this $25,000 piece of land. That's one way
That's
use
exactly
to
land plus
purchase
cash
money
or paper.
at a
It's just doing
discount.
it the other way around. He's doing it from the other side.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's the formula that works. How do I use existing equity for down payment? We covered that in the creation of wealth formula. You just create debt against it.
I call it the cash plus trash formula.
Yes,
Right?
cash plus trash. I'm trying to, land plus cash is better. Okay, describe a JV. I don't know that we need to, I don't know about that. So joint venture means anytime two people get together, well, the same as a syndication for a purpose, that's a joint venture. Kind of joint ventures we do a lot of times here. For instance, the deal with Murfreesboro, okay, I put up extra collateral in a duplex. I'm not in Illinois, I don't want to do any work. Noah comes, he does all the work, he gets half ownership in a mobile home park by just doing all the work. So that's the kind of joint venture that I think Dave's talking about when we talk about this group. We're talking about cooperation between exchangers to get something accomplished. We all know there's syndications and all kinds of other joint ventures to deal with. Can I find partners for deals in the room? So Dave thinks more from the syndication point of view. Absolutely, you can find partners for your deals in the room. And most of us do deals with people in the room. What other networking is available for exchangers? We have local exchange groups. We have, there's a whole bunch of, that's a hard question, I guess. Most of you, how many people here have a local exchange group that they go to? Okay. And then the other communities don't, right?
That's less than half.
Yeah, it's less than half.
Raised our hand.
I know, and so the issue is, we no longer, as much as we'd like, have local exchange groups in all the different communities. We will help you with NCE, and I'm pretty sure the SEC will step up as well. We will backstop and support any new local groups that want to do.
Local exchange groups are really a treasure, and they are fragile. I mean, for instance, I live in Phoenix in the wintertime, to escape where I live at 8,500 feet in Colorado. And Phoenix, 5 million people in Maricopa County,
Don't have a.
no exchange group. The last one was very active, but they went away about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know. I mean, and somebody tried to start it again, nothing. They're fragile, they need to be maintained.
Well, we have some real gems, like the Mile High Exchanges that meet every week. The Tucson group is another one with you guys. You've been around for 60 years. Our Pikes Peak Exchanges has been around. The trophy's got 1963 on it. So, we've been around.
Yeah, we meet every week in San Diego too. Another thing I'll throw out there is that a lot of these local exchange meetings since the last year and a half have gone virtual. OCE is a virtual meeting.
That's really
I would,
blown up. Yeah.
I would definitely, and one of the things that we're looking to do here at NCE is have some sort of bulletin board where people can have as a reference for these other resources of these other local meetings. That still needs to be organized.
Sure.
So we have
Yes, sir.
Zoom meetings going on all the time, and it's really ballooned with the Zoom. Jim Buchanan.
On what you hit on, we took advantage of the COVID and we went Zoom, and I agree with you. I don't like Zoom. It's not as effective as face-to-face, but It allows us to spread out. So we changed the Tucson group, which was just a few people that met twice a month.
And used to be much bigger.
Yes,
back
it
in the
did,
day.
and then, well, if you talk to Gunny, he'll say that when the 1031 came to be, it all went down. But, and we date back to about 1960, we found out. So we've changed it to ASREX, Arizona Real Estate Exchangers, and we haven't gotten a lot of participation as we hoped from the rest of the state, but we have got participation from the other states, Blake being one of them, Mile High being one thing, thanks to Neil over here.
I get your stuff.
And that's really worked out, and hopefully we can expand on this next year, so.
Let me get through the rest of these, so we're about done. Different types of benefits, hopefully we've done none of this. Is there anything else we gotta do? Go last one, let's see what else we got, 'cause we're about done with time. This is something we can talk about forever, the power of the room, okay? There's nothing, this room has changed most of our lives, okay? I know it's changed my life. I'm not sitting in a free and clear luxury hotel kind of house if it ain't for this group. The people, the formulas, the knowledge, the cooperation, okay, not competition, we work together, we hook both sides of the wagon, we pull the same direction. And the experience, the number of people in this room, you know, I've been doing this 35 years, and I'm way less experienced than a huge number of these guys. Here's my reference info, you got NCE, which you know, these were from when I was teaching classes for other people, SEC, Mile High Exchangers, Pikes Peak Exchangers. And I think that's all we have with that. I have other formulas that we're gonna, that we can go over, and I have some other examples in there, but I think
12 o'clock exactly.
it is 12 o'clock.
There we go.
I think we did.
I see that.
Thank you very much.